So there's this post that I came across, and it's some really good dialogue going on in the comments, and it's talking about what's happening in Jamaica, and it's nothing new. This has been happening over the last 2 decades, maybe more. Yeah, definitely more. Because I remember being a kid, hearing about sandals and Montego Bay and beautiful Mount Airy Lodge. All you have to bring is your love of everything. Wait, no, Mount Airy Lodge is in. No, never mind. Wrong commercial. Anyway, um, wrong commercial jingle. But yeah, I remember the sandals commercials. To come visit. Montego Bay and all that type of stuff. You know, um, that was a big thing even when I was a kid. So it's been more than 20 years. But you see the work that's been done now more than ever before because, 20 years of construction and buying up land and, redeveloping and all that, you know, uh, 20 years of that, the island probably doesn't look the same as it looked 30 years ago, right? Obviously. Um, but anyway, the conversation was talking about, well, what can we do, And one of the solutions I had was ownership, for, us or, Jamaican people of Jamaican lineage that are here in the States and Canada and England to buy back land and stuff like that. And one person, she had said something really interesting, about how, but the natives have made it. Not all the natives, obviously, but some of the natives have made it unsafe for people to come back and buy land and so on and so forth. But I think that but that is the first step to start with ownership because if the colonizers are able to buy up land and create wealth and all that, why can't we do the same thing, right? So so again, buying the property, um, my solution also includes things like us coming together as a diaspora, and essentially buying back the island, right? I believe African Americans and Jamaicans can work together, pool our resources, and fix this problem with ease. African Americans are said to represent one of the largest economic forces in the world. Yet, in the country that we live in, we own very little. Why is that? Simply because much of the money that we earn throughout our lifetimes is spent making other people rich and wealthy. We shop at beauty supply stores that aren't owned by us. We eat at restaurants and buy from bodegas in our neighborhoods that aren't owned by us. We spend money at supermarkets and countless small businesses that create generational wealth, but often not for our own communities. Across the country, in predominantly black communities, we have allowed others to come in and collect our dollars whilst building wealth in their own families and communities, right? Which is no shade to them. This is not, oh, stop shopping at the bodega. No, that's not what this is about. They're doing what you come to America to do. Obtain a piece of this pie. Unfortunately, we've been priced out, redlined out of everything, and that's by design. But we still thrive, and we're still able to make it. So I don't understand why the conversation still gets stuck on well, what do we do? How do we fix this, right? So when people say that the black dollar only stays in the black community for a short period of time, whilst it circulates in other communities for days, weeks, even, um, there is a lot of truth to it, but there's also some truth behind why that happens, and that's what we need to really discuss. We don't have enough businesses, institutions, and ownership within our own communities to keep those dollars circulating amongst ourselves. Other people have monopolized many of the goods and services that we rely on. Uh, Beauty supply stores, like I said, Did I say that already? Barbershops, where are the black barbershops in the black community? You know, but our money has little choice but to leave the community. You know what I mean? It's not like we choose that. We really don't have a choice. If we don't spend the money in the way that you know what I'm saying, if we don't spend that money, we don't eat. We don't have hair supplies. We don't have shape ups. You know what I mean? For the fellas, but we are complicit in this as well. Because, and this is where we're complicit. Okay. We glorify luxury brands. We spend money at expensive restaurants because our favorite rappers, talk about them. We chase lifestyles marketed by celebrities. And our celebrities don't always help because many of them promote the very brands and experiences, that encourage us to spend rather than build, right? I don't remember a time when a large number of Black Americans dreamed of vacationing in Saint-Tropez or Greece or the Greek Isles until people like Beyonce and Jay-Z made those destinations a part of the cultural conversation. Now you have everyday regular black folks that work for the post office and MTA and Con Edison working overtime and working at these jobs overtime just to spend their hard-earned money to travel to these places, take pictures for Instagram, and say that they vacation where Beyonce vacationed. I'm taking flights. You taking flights, but you have no equity. You know what I mean? Like, okay, enjoy them flights. Nope. Enjoy them flights without equity, or inclusion for that matter, right? But that's a part of the problem. We've developed a keeping up with the Joneses mentality instead of a wealth building mentality. We think buying a condo here or a property there means we made it, but it's deeper than that. Did you use a black realtor? Did you buy your furniture from a black-owned furniture store? You see where I'm going here, right? What else? Even when we support local businesses, are these businesses owned by people who are reinvesting in our communities, even if they're not black? Are they reinvesting in black communities? You understand? So I'm not saying don't buy, from other places, but buy from places that are reinvesting back into us. We support them. They should support us, right? At some point, we have to ask ourselves, where are our dollars going and who is benefiting from them? Because at the end of the day, the biggest challenges across the diaspora isn't a lack of talent, intelligence, resources, or spending power. It's a lack of unity, ownership, and long-term, economic strategy. Until we address that, we'll continue making everyone else rich whilst we wonder why our communities aren't advancing at the same pace. And that's simply an uncomfortable conversation for a lot of people. And it needs to be addressed, We give so much to everyone else. And, whenever black people fight for something, we don't just fight for us. Our fights usually include everybody else. You know what I'm saying? LGBTQ people wouldn't have the rights that we have if it weren't for black people. Even though black people have a reputation of, not showing love or having love for the LGBTQIA community, that's an issue. I'm not going to take that away. But at the end of the day, if it weren't for African Americans, we wouldn't have the conversation about the LGBTQIA community wouldn't even be here. And it's always black queer people who usually spearhead every movement. Every movement that you could think of was started by some black queer people, from the civil rights movement to women's rights. Gay rights, Black Lives Matter. We're just all over, fighting for people. But we're still a part of the broader African American community. You understand what I'm saying? So it's still safe to say that African Americans are usually at the forefront of every major movement in this country, and even inspired movements in other nations, especially in the Caribbean, like, Haiti, Jamaica. We inspire people to fight for their freedoms and things of that nature. I believe what we did here inspired, South Africans who dealt with their apartheid for a very long time, you know. But yeah, anyway, that's the option. That's the solution. I'm sorry, that's the solution. Ownership and us coming together as one diaspora, as a chorus, not as solo acts or groups with lead singers. No, 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 no. We need to be a choir on one accord. We don't, and another thing I said in the comments of that post, I said we don't need a leader, and this is why I distrust leaders, because leaders are human. Humans tend to get greedy, and every leader has a price to sell out. Every leader has a price to sell out. So I don't care if it's a Jasmine Crockett. I don't care. I don't care if it's a Roland Martin, and I love Roland Martin. I swear by him all the time. I tell people, you want to know what's going on, go to Roland Martin's page, go to his YouTube, Black Star Power Network. That's where it's at, right? But I feel like if he became a leader, I feel like leaders can be bought, and and that's just me. But at the end of the day, we don't need leaders. We just need to come together on one accord. That's all we need to do.